Crime, punishment, prisons. How do we deal with these problems? From the earliest days of human history, there have been attempts by society to control or change the behavior of individuals who act in ways that offend the rest of society. Most of these attempts have involved punishments of one sort or another. While some cultures continue to inflict pain or humiliation onto offenders, most Western countries have opted more for incarceration, locking a person up for extended periods of time. Treatment during imprisonment can be quite harsh, even in the so-called advanced societies.
And the police, the way they treat inmates, more so in the county than in state prison, real negative.
They say things they wouldn't normally say. They talk to us like we're animals. And the mental abuse is telling us that we're low lives, pieces of shit, less than a man in prison, not equal to you or anyone else because of our wrongdoings, regardless of what the crime is.
In some developing countries, the conditions can be much worse.
In jails here in Kenya, they're not good and they're not conducive. Those guys, they really pass through hardships, in jail. You're beaten by those policemen thoroughly everywhere on body. They don't care, they don't mind where they beat you. They just beat you everywhere they see. You cannot even walk, It's so very harsh, so serious, so painful.
Cruel punishments have often been condemned as ineffectual in rehabilitating criminals, and it was for that reason that Western society shifted more to imprisonment as a way of dealing with aberrant behavior. Prisons for young or first offenders were called reformatories because the emphasis was on reform. However, it is widely accepted that even the most humane prisons have been shown to produce minimal success in terms of rehabilitating offenders.
Seeing me over and over again. I was a program failure. I had been in all different sorts of programs. Reform is a nice idea, but it doesn't happen much. 75 out of 100 people return to jail.
Of the women that are detained, 80% of them are mothers, which means that their children are now in foster care or with grandparents or with best friends. They're 4 times more likely to be incarcerated themselves.
It's never shown really that the more prisons we have, the greater our public safety is. So it hasn't shown itself to work because an eye for an eye just doesn't work. Nothing is gained from that. There are some good judges who would be about reform, but it's very much about retribution.
You're there to win. And in order to win, and the defense is there to win too, and the only way you're going to do your best is to get jurors that are as unfair and more likely to convict than anybody else in that room.
In prison I changed, you know what I mean? I became hard, different, not caring. Here, let me put it like this. Insanity is doing the same thing over again, expecting different results, and there is none. That's my insanity. I've always gotten out and done the same things. Well, here's something that's even more insane. The judges and the courts see that I keep coming back in front of them, and the insanity is they keep putting me in prison expecting there to be different results. So who's more insane, me or the system? At least I can see the reality of mine, but the court system is blind to it.
So punishment per se doesn't have a very good record. Men go in there and they're just abused by other men, allowed to abuse other men. It's a system that breeds higher levels of abusive and violent behavior.
The present system, where there's tremendous amount of punishment and stuff, hinders that realization of remorse, because soon the perpetrator feels that they have become the victim.
The prison mentality continues to grow, despite the fact that as an institution, prisons have been shown to be ineffective in rehabilitating prisoners.
Last year, there were 2.2 million men, women, children behind bars.
They spend $50,000 a year keeping someone in prison. Crime control is a huge industry. It's, you know, multi-billion dollar national industry, because we spend close to $11 billion here in the state.
California gives more money to the prison systems than they do to education. They would rather cut the education of a child than cut the prison population and the money they give these COs.
You know, and we don't have enough money for schools and colleges because so much money is going to lock people up forever in prison. It costs more to keep a person in prison than to send them to Harvard, right?
Experts agree that real change has to start in the heart of the offender. No amount of government spending or harsh punishment can accomplish that.
Can you force someone to change? Yeah, but how long will they change for? Long enough to get away from whoever it is forcing them? If it was a voluntary thing, you know, I want to go to this, I want to change my life, you know, I'm seeking this help, that would be different. But they try to force it down someone's throat that don't want to be there, and they're not going to do it.
And so once they're incarcerated, they're told that they're criminals. So the way to reduce recidivism and repeat offenses is really to just look at them differently, treat them differently, and empower them in a different way.
I think this idea of some sort of transformative experience where I see that what I've done is wrong, I have true remorse, I make amends, I try to make it right, and then I try to go on with my life, that's probably ideal.
And I was really tired of going in and out of jail, and I didn't know how to really stop the cycle. But I'd like to see more in the way of nurturing their education, to work on the underlying issue, whatever caused them to commit those crimes in the first place.
We could build a system and a society without prisons. When crime is committed, you would confront the criminal, the person, with the person who the crime was committed against. And that would, you know, bring a sense of, like, understanding. You know, they're human beings. They're like you and I. There's no difference, you know. It's there, but for the grace of God, go I, you know. It truly is. It's not bad. It's not like that's a them and us. Those are ours, you know. There are friends, there are children, there are mothers, there are fathers, husbands, wives.
We noticed that there was a contradiction in the way that Christians talk about sin and in the way that they talk about crime.
Forgiveness is the foundation of our Christian faith. Forgiveness of sins, we have to be careful. It should not be pushed to the forgiveness of crimes.
He sent his one and only Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for us, so that we may enter into heaven. On a secular level, like, there should be some sort of justice. If authority says that, like, we have to be punished for this, then yeah, like, I totally agree with it.
Our prisons are full with Christians, with religious people. They are there because the law of the land has seen merit in arresting or in jailing these people.
Yeah, I definitely believe that somebody who commits an act of crime or murder deserves to be in jail or punished somehow. A sin is something that's not inflicted on someone else. A crime is something that you voluntarily do to hurt someone else.
In essence, we are saying that God has also established laws and governments. Showing mercy and facing the consequences of your crime are two different things.
Because in the law court, they will not say, oh, the judge will not say you sin. He's going to say you commit a crime.
So you have all these people talking about forgiveness, but when it comes to serious sins or things that affect us personally and that we would call a crime, there really isn't a lot of room for forgiveness. So I think there's some confusion in the minds of many religious people and probably in the minds of most people about this whole concept of forgiveness.
The forgiveness should be total. If God forgives everything, Human beings should be ready to forgive their fellow human beings everything. If somebody attacked me, definitely the most natural thing to do is self-defense. If I see that a little bit of a push can give me a chance, I will do it. I will definitely do it. I will definitely hit him back hard, if I feel like I have the capacity to do so. If I get a chain or something and I can realize these are young people I can actually whip, I will whip them. And I'd lock the door behind me.
A tiny group of radical Christians have experimented with a shocking alternative to how we presently deal with the task of changing criminal behavior.
So we looked into what has happened when a community or state has been dominated by a particular religion. Did it lead to greater consistency in how their theology applied to criminal offenders? In countries where Catholicism or another Christian religion was able to gain control, treatment of offenders was still pretty harsh, particularly towards so-called heretics. For example, in John Calvin's community, which taught extreme grace, or another example, the Pilgrims, they both incorporated executions. So our conclusion was that Christian teaching about both forgiveness and the treatment of criminal offenders was so confused that we pretty much needed to throw it out altogether and look at it from a totally different perspective.
Do I believe that Jesus taking punishment for us has worked? Well, for some people I do, but some people I don't, because some people take advantage of it.
At the moment, the way how things are financially, I think people don't have that much time to be thinking about forgiveness at the moment. I don't think Jesus' punishment has worked in changing people.
Yeah, I would say that I think the whole theology of grace has been abused by some people who think that they just can continue demanding God's grace, and they are not willing to make any effort to put things right that they have done wrong. God actually demands that forgiveness be paid for. Forgiveness is not cheap, and Jesus had to die on the cross, and the cross is painful. But it is through that cross where forgiveness comes.
We came to see that the cross represented extreme anger against sin. At the same time, it expressed ultimate love for the sinner, like as a way of showing forgiveness without lowering the standards. The problem is that we find it easy to think about the forgiveness, that we forget about the anger against sin. So I think we've lost the ability to be shocked by what Jesus went through. The Old Testament is extremely harsh, but it's in that context which really makes us appreciate the message of love and forgiveness. So we started thinking about the other side of the message, the fact that Jesus was tortured and killed. He didn't commit any sins, and he definitely wasn't a criminal, but he suffered in our place. So we started thinking, how could we revive that message and apply both sides in a corrupt world?
The Christians went looking for what they could regard as one of the greatest examples of criminal behavior in the world today. They turned to the Communist Party in China and their cruel treatment of Falun Gong practitioners over the past 10 years.
法轮大法就是信仰真善人，以真善人这个原则进行修炼，提高人的心性。
十几个人对着惦记他。
The practice of Falun Dafa began in China in 1992,
几个原因啊，主要的原因一个呢，就是当时因为修炼法轮功的人非常多，已经超过共产党，信仰共产党的人数了，共产党员的人数，所以共产党就非常害怕。
The case being brought forward today is Falun Dafa versus Zheng Zemin and Luogan.
And now we call the first witness, Miss Xue Shenzhen.
9个人同时把我的腿分成一条直线，然后抓着我的脖子，猛地往地上压。就在做这个动作的时候，我听到了从我的背后咔咔传出了2声骨折的声音。
因为法轮功那么好，不应该说这样的话，所以我当时也喊了口号，所以他们后来又把我关了1个月。警惕，电警棍，当时就是知道我身体已经非常不好，电警棍什么就是电我。
In any civilized country, the torture and the executions which took place without any form of trial or other basic human rights would not only be condemned, but the people responsible would be treated as being amongst the most callous murderers throughout history. We, the jury, find Jiang Zemin and Luo Gan guilty of the most abominable cruelties in the treatment of their fellow citizens. For their crimes today, we have agreed to impose a punishment of 25 lashes of the whip for each of the 2 defendants. Because they have refused to appear, 2 innocent citizens, one from America and myself from the United Kingdom, will take this token punishment on their behalf, and on behalf of the many thousands of people who have lost their lives as the result of the actions of these 2 men.
We understand that the whipping of innocent people in a civilized country like Australia will shock many people.
Will the substitute please come forward who's taking the punishment for Luogan? Yeah, that's it. The trial is over.
I am so moved by the generous heart these people have shown today. And I'm very moved.
律师会尊敬地记住诸位今天所说的一切，谢谢大家。
会唤起人们的良知，会有更多的正义人士站在正义边。
Whatever we can do in solidarity with the suffering that continues to go on, we want to do what we can. This was nothing in comparison.
我来自中国，今天非常感谢2位先生能够扮演父亲的这个角色，你们辛苦了。
Is a great thing, and I think this today has set a precedent where people far and wide will realize that this persecution is a tangible reality, and hopefully they'll open their hearts and their minds and join with the Human Rights Society to help us stop the persecution. The lashing, I think sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind to wake people up. So I do hope that this suffering these 2 innocent people went through today will achieve that.
So we sent notices to Jiang Zemin and Luo Gan. We let them know if they were found guilty today that a form of corporal punishment would be meted out. At the same time, we let them know that two innocent people from the jury were willing to take on that punishment for them on their behalf.
Yeah, the Chinese government didn't turn up today, but we have no doubt that we have shamed them in a way that they have not been shamed by previous campaigns against their behavior.
Because the media had been invited to witness the whippings in a country where it's regarded as barbaric, we're more or less forcing the public to open their eyes to at least a little bit of what these men had done to people in their own country.
We were using a form of substitutionary punishment to communicate the message of the cross, which is pretty much extreme love for the sinner, for the offender, at the same time extreme hate for what they've done.
What we've done here today is akin to a political demonstration. We were confronting the government of the biggest country in the world and trying to bring them to accountability in some small way for what they've done. It's just a small drop in the bucket of what is needed to bring justice to the people of China who have suffered under that regime. But I believe that it's a very important drop.
The Christians were looking for change, rehabilitation, reform, but it did not come overnight. They believed that it was the lack of a just system in China that made Zenin and Gan feel little or no responsibility for their actions. But no one from the Chinese embassy turned up at the trial. However, another situation arose which gave the Christians an opportunity to try out their new approach to criminal behavior in a way that was much closer to home.
So here we are in Long Beach, right next to the house where my parents were living as of May 5th, 2006. Basically what happened on the 5th of May is I came back with Reinhard and Jeremy to share with my parents the fact that I was going to be a Christian, that I decided to join the Christian community, and to explain it to them in person, as well as to pick up some of my belongings, which I wanted to bring with me. But what ended up was Reinhard nearly being dead, nearly killed, lying face down in a pool of blood.
I was attacked by Joe's father, it's Jared, and I was also attacked by John, which is Joe's half-brother. They attacked me, they kicked me almost to death, until some passerby with a camera came by at that point, but I was already close to actually being killed at the time. Yeah, I got a whole spectrum of injuries, starting off with broken vertebrae, broken teeth, lots of bruises, cuts in the face, a bleeding in the head, which affected my memory to some extent. These were the main injuries.
I haven't actually been back over the past 3 years. Kind of been afraid of the area because of how traumatic the experience was for me. The crime was totally covered up by the Long Beach Police Department. They did nothing. They didn't prosecute. Jeremy was chased. He managed to escape being hit only because he ran. And Joshua, my younger brother, seems to know exactly what his role was in the situation, because as soon as Reinhard was being beat, punched, and kicked, Jared gave me a stiff arm back into the house, and that's when Joshua grabbed me and pulled me into Sheila and Jared's back bedroom, and I wasn't able to exit into the front gate where the majority of the beating actually took place. I was kidnapped and held against my will by my family, by my relatives, until I was able to eventually escape and rejoin this Christian community.
Now the Christians were experiencing in the United States a taste of what the Falun Gong in China had gone through. The police had been told that they were a heretical cult, and that was enough to make the police feel that the Johnsons were justified in what they did. Another whipping trial was scheduled and announced to the media.
Yeah, so what we wanted most was just for my family to repent. Reinhard was willing to forgive them, The first step just needs to be that they showed some remorse, took some responsibility for their actions. At some point, Ronald even said clearly that if it ever went to court, he would speak up in their defense. So obviously the forgiveness and the willingness to move forward was there. They just needed to take responsibility for what they'd done. And I think that was the same situation with the trial. They were aware that we were offering to take the punishment for them. The main thing was that we weren't just gonna pretend that it never happened, you know? So it's the whole concept of hating the sin and loving the sinner.
The Johnsons came to the courthouse, but not to attend the trial. They brought a gang of young men with them, who were there to take Joseph away from the group. Inside the auditorium, the trial was held and the punishments meted out. 4 Christians took a total of 60 lashes of the whip on behalf of 4 members of the Johnson family who had been involved in the attack. When members of the community tried to leave, they were chased back inside the building by the men who had come to support the Johnsons. Locked inside, they had no recourse but to telephone for police support in leaving the scene.
Yeah, we're fairly confident that Fox News is the one that set up the whole tense post-trial scene. There's this fake thug there, Lamar Lane. I never met him before in my life, and he's over there yelling, you know, talking about how he knows me. So I yell back at him, I say, look, you know, I've never seen you before in my life, I don't know you. And Fox News takes me saying that, they splice it with a picture of my father, and they try to pretend that I'm saying that to my own father, whereas I'm saying that to Lamar, some guy I've never seen before.
That's my son, and the Christians brainwash him, sir. His mother's so hurt.
I know about the Bible, Joe. They telling you a lie. They telling you a lie, Joe.
Joseph finally responds, but it's far from what his family expected.
I don't know you. I never seen you in my life. I don't know who you are.
And just like that, Joseph leaves with the Christians, leaving broken hearts and so many unanswered questions.
The attention from the media, even though it was not sympathetic to our position, it was enough to cause the police to lay charges against my father and older brother, whereas they had known about the attack for, I think, about 6 months by that point, but they did nothing. But the media attention helped to shame them into doing what they were supposed to do a long time ago.
The Johnson family has not only lost their son to the Christians, Joseph's father and brother have now been charged with assault.
Over in Kenya, however, a situation arose which was less extreme than either of the 2 other situations in which substitutionary punishment was trialled. But this one provided hope of being a better test for a number of reasons. For one thing, it occurred in a situation where there was quite a serious backdrop of harsh justice.
The sales of Kenya is not good. They usually beat using gains. They can use even whips. They can even use very hard sticks, very big sticks. Even they can hit you with them around your head, everywhere. Or they can either use some legs, their boots, you know, to crack your head, you know.
The offender was a person of generally good character as well.
Nicholas was one of the early volunteers that we had at Takatifu Gardens, our volunteer center. He came to help us with the reading program, and he used to do a lot of the hard work, like digging out the stumps and working in the garden and stuff. He was a lot of fun to be around, and I guess he had his problems as well.
Nicholas had a drinking problem. When he was drunk, he couldn't actually work. He was more of a nuisance sometimes, and some of the members of the community will talk to him and ask him to go back and come back when he was sober. They were trying to get him to see that it wasn't actually the best way to go, like just drinking your life away. There was more life out there.
Then I used to drink heavily. So even I could even go and steal a book and go and sell so that I could have a drink, you know, because I was very much used to that drink. I could not even stop it.
At one point, Nicholas's old friend Wycliffe came and volunteered. He started working with us as well, and I think Wycliffe was a bit of a bad influence on Nicholas, because that's when things started going downhill for both of them.
We went and stole some dictionaries, you know, around a very big bundle of dictionary, and we started selling, you know, to some schools, whereby we could get money. So Wycliffe was arrested in connection with stealing those dictionaries, and he was beaten thoroughly, around 30-35 whips on his buttocks, you know.
I do remember the first discussion we had about the idea. Fran had been to the police station and Wycliffe had been caught and had been beaten up.
I was shocked, yeah. It's not like every day you see people getting whipped by the police. But yeah, I remember at the time thinking, like, I wish like I could take his place or offer to take the whipping for him. But yeah, I didn't think that the police would go for that.
So Fran came and shared the whole incident, the way Wycliffe had to be beaten up really badly, and I remember sharing that it was pretty a common thing, like people got beaten up a lot in the police cells.
I was thinking, like, well, what do we do with Nicholas, because he hadn't yet been found by the police. So when I got back to the compound, discussed it with the others and thought, well, is there a way that we could deal with him ourselves without the police being involved?
If we could administer the correction with love, like as a Christian brother, it was more likely to have better effect on him than taking him to the police to get beaten up.
Since the district officer in charge at the police station was a Christian, we thought we might be able to explain it to him in Christian terms and try and get permission from the police to deal with Nicholas ourselves.
So the idea came up initially, like we could offer to take the lashes ourselves, like one of us could volunteer to take the lashes on their place if they didn't want to, just so that if, let's say, Nicholas took the lashes, then it will be like he knows he's done something wrong, and he will probably like be willing to change. And if he refused to take the lashes and could see that one of his friends took the lashes for him, at the end of the day he will see that there were consequences, and if there are consequences to it, then he's more likely to turn his life around from it.
We kind of felt like we had an opportunity here to really affect Nicholas in a deep and personal way. Maybe even the way that we'd been affected by, Jesus dying on the cross for us. Even though we knew, like, people in the West are going to be shocked at the fact that we're going to be whipping somebody, we were looking behind the whipping to see, like, the love in the plan that we were actually coming up with.
Personally, I didn't have a problem with it. I think probably because of my background, like the whole whipping wasn't really an issue. We had a discussion about who was actually going to give the lashes, and I volunteered to do it. And I thought it would probably even be more controversial if one of the other members who are white, did the lashing, and it just felt more comfortable for me to do it.
We went to the police station and we spoke to the district officer in charge, and we explained to him exactly what we had in mind, what we were wanting to do with Nicholas. And he thought it was like a really good Christian way of dealing with the problem. So he gave us his blessing, and with that blessing we just went forward with it.
But it wasn't just about taking a lash and whipping someone just for the fun of it. It was more of trying to correct someone in the best way we knew how, and hoping that somewhere in their conscience they'd learn from it.
So after having stolen some books, I was called at Talkative Garden so that we have a discussion, so that we have a solution towards me.
We basically went through the whole thing of what had happened with the theft and everything, and then after hearing the account, we prescribed 5 lashes of the whip as punishment for the theft.
We told him, like, we love him and we are not doing it because we hate him. It was more like a love thing. He did something wrong and someone has to pay for it. There's supposed to be a consequence, and it is either him or Fran But whatever decision he made, it wasn't supposed to make us hate him. It was out of love.
And Franklin, as my friend, as my brother, was willing to do it. He was willing to accept on my behalf to have him beaten, you know, those 5 lashes. But on my part, I knew I had done wrong, so I just accepted to have that lashes on me because I had done wrong by having those books stolen. No, it was not a good idea.
I was happy when he agreed to take the lashes himself. If he's taking the lashes himself, then he knows what he did is wrong.
The fact that he had a serious drinking problem, we were thinking that his chances of actually changing as a result of this were going to be slim. But we also felt that the love that we wanted to show through the whole thing had a potential to affect him in a deep way. So we were still willing to take a risk on that.
Apart from the first slash, the other 4 were not as strong as the first one. Because I did the first one and I sort of freaked out. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, and the other 4, I sort of kept going because I already started, but it was a bit hard administering the other 4.
And I was beaten those 5 lashes, and things were not bad, and things came to normal place because they forgave me for the matter I had done, and we were all together as one, you know, as one family, and they really loved me much more.
When the trial at Long Beach happened, and there are all these media frenzies, and people were talking, and people were calling us names, I was struggling a lot with that. Finally, I realized I was sort of looking at the whole thing the wrong way. I was sort of missing the whole spirit of where it came from, which was we were trying to show love to people and we were hoping they will change.
You know, my friend Francis was willing to take from me those 5 lashes, whereby he showed a very good, they really loved me, you know, so much. In my heart, I knew they really cared for me, they really loved me, did not want me to go back again to doing that, such a silly mistakes of stealing, such bad things, you know.
After the whipping, Nicholas hung around for quite some time. He was still working with us for a while. Later he moved to another place, another part of the country, so we kind of lost a bit of contact with him. Though recently he contacted us, so we got in touch with him again and we've been in contact with him.
Even me, I was happy the moment I was given that punishment. It really corrected me, it really put me on the right track. Up to now, I've really changed. And I thank Takatifu Cadence, you know. And after that punishment, things have really changed. I went and got a job somewhere, and for now I'm married, and I've stopped from stealing, it was a very bad habit. I've stopped drinking the way I used to drink day and night, and I thank God, and plus my friends at Takatifu Cadence who gave me the light, you know. The right track, you know, they showed me the way, you know.
Well, personally, if I'd done something that required me to be punished in one way or another, and someone else was willing to go through the pain for me, it will change my life.
Yeah, I would definitely say it was a success, like seeing how much impact it had on him, just the whole thing, you know, offering to take the punishment for him and stuff, and the fact that he chose to take the punishment himself. It's obviously made an impact in his life, so I would definitely say it was a success.
Seeing Nicholas and seeing that he's actually learned from it and seeing how much progress he's made, I can pretty much say I'm proud. Yes. Will I do it again? Yeah, I will do it again. For the same reasons, I will. Because I know it will be changing someone's life and passing a lesson, not just to one person, but to a lot more people who are going to read about it or hear about it or see it. A lot of people will probably hate it and put it down and turn it into whatever circus they want to turn it into. But somewhere in the middle of all those people, there will be someone who will learn from it, and that one person will be worth it. So yeah, I'd do it again.
Nicholas's story was an inspiring conclusion to the 3 attempts at substitutionary punishment. One had been done as a protest against a harsh and unjust regime. The second dealt more specifically with an isolated incident of injustice. Media attention may have shamed the police into taking legal action, but tacit support from the media and from the police for what the Johnsons had done seemed to block any thoughts of real repentance. The third case was different in that it took place in the context of a penal system that was quite harsh. The grace offered by the Christians had the desired effect even when the offender took his own punishment. Nevertheless, the Christians believed that it was Fran's offer to take Nicholas's punishment for him, combined with the severity of Kenyan justice, that caused such a dramatic change in Nicholas's behaviour. The Christians do not have plans for future trials, nor do they believe that substitutionary punishment would work on a large scale in any legal system. However, they do hope to inspire people to think more deeply about the sacrifice that Jesus made, and his call for others to follow that example.
I did someone wrong, but in turn they did something right. I think that gets to the person a lot more than, you know, like teeth for teeth sort of thing.
So it kind of makes sense as far as like a symbolic gesture to say that, like, all right, if this guy's not going to pay for it, then someone has to pay for it.
My thoughts on substitutionary punishment, that's basically what Jesus did. Jesus, we were the perpetrators, but Jesus took it all.
I don't think it's just. Definitely, just because like that other person is a human being also, and he definitely did not deserve to get punished for something that he did not do, which I guess you can kind of draw some parallelism to like how Christ didn't even have to do this for us.
Why? How would it be unchristian if the founder of Christianity is the one who was the model example of it? So. Yeah, of course it's Christian.
If someone was to take someone else's punishment to show them a different way of life, that would work. That would definitely work.
When you see someone else in pain, it kind of makes you feel bad about yourself, and then you might want to change your own perspective on life and how you treat other people.
To me, it sounds like what Jesus did. He took the place of this guy named Barnabas, who was an actual murderer. He took his place and went on the cross like a criminal, even though he did nothing wrong. So to me, that's very honorable. I don't think that like whipping another person in place of the criminal would do any good, because the criminal didn't receive the punishment himself. Maybe he would feel guilty for having someone else take the punishment.
It's like a noble thing, you know, it's like, it makes a good gesture and it makes a good statement, and hopefully you think that if someone with some morals can see that and kind of like, it would stir something inside of them to make some kind of moral gesture. But like, I mean, you can't do that all the time. It's not gonna work 100% of the time, obviously.
Hopefully you taking someone's punishment will make them appreciate themselves and you better, so maybe sometimes taking someone's punishment might be a good idea.
That would be such a big impact to me, that would change me straight away. That's quite serious, I think, you know. Who would ever take anyone else's punishment?